right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And yes, we're back. We're back from Australia, New Zealand. What a wonderful time. But also another brother's back from India. Jacob Prash. Jacob, how you doing today?
Wonderful to be back. Thank you so very much. Every blessing.
Good to see you, dear brother. Glad you're back, and glad you're back back at home. And you can get ready for your next set of actions as you're always on the move. God bless you. And we also have down the street from not too far from my house, Jay. How you doing, Jay?
Actually, I don't think I'm down the street from you right at the moment.
Sorry. That's right. You're not.
I'm still stuck in Texas, and hopefully I'll be out of here on Tuesday.
Texas.
That's what I hear.
Yeah. There you are, Texas. Well, our hometowns originally. So Houston area. God bless you, brother. Glad you're doing well. And down under, just spent some time with them down in Australia. Davey, how you doing?
Pretty good, thanks, dear brother. And you please know you're welcome back anytime. Everybody's already saying, when are you coming back? We want Marco back. So.
A wonderful time. Good morning to everybody in Australia, New Zealand. Great to be with you. Well, it was great to be with you in person. Now I get back to be with you online, but it was a wonderful time. Jacob, real quick before we get started, a couple of things. Actually, let's go. Jay, can you talk about the podcast real quick, and then we'll go to Jacob in a moment. But just in general, when I was there in Australia, New Zealand, it was wonderful to meet the believers there, and a lot of them were asking, "Hey, can we get more stuff?" They love the content, they love the Bible studies, they love the updates. And I kept telling them, get to the podcast. It's easy to listen to. So a lot of people knew, but a lot of people didn't know. So can you mention that and give us just an understanding about the podcast, where to get them and what to do with them? Because a lot of people just watch on YouTube and they don't realize that they could also save on their data plan by simply downloading it from a podcast.
Absolutely. So if I could, just go to Amazon Podcast. Also, you can go to Apple Podcasts, Podchasers, Spotify. There are so many different platforms that Moriel has podcasts loaded to. And just download a podcast. If you want to check out some of Jacob's old lessons, they're all there. If you want to check out some of the new lessons that he's doing, currently he's doing a really great lesson on Exodus. Also, Marco's going through the book of Amos. A lot of his old teachings are there as well. You have Sandy. There's just so much content for you to download and listen to when you're in airplane mode or in a car that's getting spotty Wi-Fi or spotty data. Anyway, lots of resources for you to download, listen, learn, and grow. All brought to you by our podcast team.
Amen. Well, thank you so much. And you did such a great job, Tim, and the believers there. So wonderful. And you can get a hold of it and send it to your friends, to your loved ones, to your enemies. They also need the gospel too. And you can let them know what Jesus has done for you. And through these Bible studies, they can learn of the grace and knowledge of our Lord Jesus. Jacob, you ready? Wanted to ask you about India and how we went there before we talk about Australia and New Zealand. Just a little bit about what happened, and as much as you can talk. I know some of the stuff is very sensitive and we can't say too much, but just what you could say.
Well, the Moriel Church that we opened, we built the building. It is halfway between Amritsar, the holy city of the Sikhs, and Lahore, Pakistan. It's quite close to the Pakistan-India border in the area of India known as Punjab. And again, there is persecution. The church, however, is already thriving. We had a number of unsaved political officials, dignitaries, mostly from the Sikh religion, local council officials and things like this, who came to the opening and heard the gospel. We had to have security out front and so forth, but it was quite an event. It's going to be posted on the Moriel website on the missions page within the next few days, along with some photographs. I was there, of course, with Pastor Mark Jackson, with Pastor Vijay, who is in Punjab, and Samuel, who is the house director of the Moriel Orphanage in Andhra Pradesh. So we were all there together, and we were joined by Mark's wife, Maggie, and some others. And the Lord really, really blessed it. I was surprised as to how well attended it was, how many people came. I spoke at some other churches, and we also had a very, very important pastors' conference. India is the most populous country in the world, but it is in a gross, gross amount of spiritual darkness. Hinduism, Jainism, to a lesser degree, Sikhism, but major in Punjab, Buddhism, and most of the Christians, or at least a lot of the Christians, are in Goa. They're Roman Catholic because it was formerly a Portuguese colony. You don't have a lot of believers as percentage of population, although it is growing. But here's what I encountered in Punjab. I actually met people who worked in the Best Western Hotel. When I tried to share my faith with them or witness to them, they never heard of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
They never heard of Jesus Christ. There are not millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people in India who never even heard of Jesus Christ, never even heard his name, didn't know what I was talking about.
Wow.
How will that nation of that size, with that many people, more people now than China, and its population is younger and growing, unlike China that's in demographic decline.
Yeah.
How will those people ever hear the gospel? The challenge is unbelievable. Moriel's role is very small in contrast to the demographic reality of the challenge, but we are there because God has put us there. We're doing well, but no matter how well you do, you're not even going to dent the surface with that many people. It is only going to be a tremendous move of God, almost of a historically unprecedented proportion, that will make the kind of impact on India that India needs. At least in China, you have an underground church. The gospel was brought to India by William Carey, the Baptist, who had to fight the Calvinists and the Baptist Union in England to be able to go to the mission field because the Calvinists didn't believe in evangelism and missions. Carey did. He was like to India what Hudson Taylor was to China. And he worked and he battled. But now his ministry is taken over by theological liberals who don't believe what he believed. They only believe in a purely social gospel. The legend or the legacy of William Carey is basically not there. You find that very, very often in many places. In England, for instance, the Baptist Church of John Bunyan in Bedfordshire is theologically liberal. They're not believers. And it was the church where John Bunyan had been the pastor. You find that in many Methodist churches. You find that in Wesley's Chapel on City Road. You find that in England. The people there now don't believe what their forefathers or founding members believed. Well, India is very much like that. They believe Thomas the Apostle came to India, which does have a historical basis, but there's all kinds of legends that are historically impossible to verify about where he was buried and all these kinds of things. He was the first one to bring the gospel to India, but that was in the 1st century. He was said to be martyred there by historical tradition. But the number of Christians in Japan, in India, I've seen other places like that, like Japan, where there's just so few Christians. But the population of Japan, about 120 million or so, or 140 million at most, if I forget, it's around there, is minuscule compared to India. You could not believe how many people. And the superstition and idolatry is unbelievable. Unbelievable. As I've said before, when you see the caste system and the injustice associated with it, it is unbelievable that Westerners would turn to things like gurus, ashrams, and yoga. Look where it comes from. People need to understand that Christianity and Judaism, or the Judeo-Christian faith, is predicated on the eradication of evil. Hinduism requires the perpetuation of evil. It's a religion that requires evil be perpetuated because of their doctrine of karma. If you did something bad in this life, somebody has to do that to you in the next life. Hence, the poverty, social injustice, these things are not seen as problematic. They're seen as karma. They're seen as part of the natural order. It seemed right that cows are fed sacks of wheat and children are allowed to go hungry. That's their karma. Hinduism is based on this idea of karma, which requires the perpetuation of evil. And Westerners don't understand that. They're just so naive and so gullible. They have their equivalents, in an odd sense, in these university students who are stupidly calling themselves liberal and revolutionary, who support Hamas without realizing what Hamas would do or does do to homosexuals, to women's rights, that kind of stupidity, a blindness that is a willful blindness. India is an eye-opener, yet you've got people going there from the West looking for spiritual truth and meaning in a religion where the life of a cow was worth more than the life of a baby, where poverty and injustice with the Dalit, the outcasts of the caste system, are not seen as problematic. They're seen as the natural order. A religion that is not aimed at the eradication of evil, but requires the perpetuation of it. This is India. If anywhere needs prayer, it is India. What a mission field. I cannot express my admiration enough to people like Mark Jackson, Amen, who directs Muriel's work there. To have to, and very often he lives on the edge of subhuman poverty with the locals for the sake of the gospel. I mean, certainly when you stay in places that are alive with roaches and rats, I mean, and again, you have the Jainists who believe that they have as much right to live as a human. This is what you're dealing with. This is India. The India that you see on the Ministry of Tourism commercials, visit India, they'll show you the beach in Goa or a 5-star hotel in Mumbai or a Bollywood movie set. That's not the real India. The real India is very, very different. That's where I was. Yet, God has his people there. And although it's a very small percentage of the population, there are believers there and the churches are growing. And Muriel's ministry in India is growing. We covet your prayers. We need your support. I'll wear my Muriel India shirt next week. I haven't unpacked yet. I have my Muriel India notebook, and here's my Muriel India pen.
There it is.
Bought some souvenirs back from Muriel India. But that is it.
Thank you, Jacob. What a wonderful news. What a wonderful, wonderful thing the Lord is doing. And we need definitely to pray. How will they hear unless somebody preaches to them? How will they ever hear somebody unless somebody goes? How will they ever go unless somebody sends them? That's Paul the Apostle. That's not just good wisdom. Those are holy scriptures in which Paul the Apostle told that about the Jews, but in general principles to the world to go out and
hundreds of millions of people have never heard of Jesus.
That's amazing. I mean, it's hard to imagine living here in the West and even in Latin America where I lived. We all know about Jesus. We all heard about Jesus. At least yes, there is a God frame in our thinking.
Yes,
who God is, who Jesus is in terms. I mean, might not know him personally, but we've heard of him. Makes the gospel easier to a certain extent, right? But you go to a place that's never heard of him.
Yes,
and those are places that I believe that the Lord wants us to be. And may the Lord bless Mark and the pastors there. Is Samuel still involved there, Jacob?
He is. Well, he's based obviously down at the orphanage in Andhra Pradesh, but he was with us in Punjab.
Amen. I must have missed his name. I heard you mentioned a couple of names. I don't know if I heard Samuel, but God bless him. I've seen pictures of him. And may the Lord continue to use him and his wife.
Incredible that Samuel didn't speak Hindi. A lot of people in the South don't speak Hindi that well. They speak it a little bit.
Interesting.
The only way Samuel could talk to the pastors in Punjab was in English and a little bit Hindi.
Yeah,
You
interesting.
know,
That is fascinating. That is very
yes,
fascinating. Yeah, and Jacob, I know there's persecution there. Maybe we can talk about it next week. I don't want to reveal too much, but I know there's a lot of persecution
yes,
toward the believers, especially with Modi's government and their pure nationalist Hindu
yes,
idea. So we have to pray for the believers there and
yes.
your work there, because it's not, it's not like setting up in Singapore. It's not like setting up in Japan, where it's nominally,
The
benign.
Indian government just concluded some kind of a armistice
Boom.
with the radical Hindus. This is the government now. Concluded an
Oh,
armistice with the radical Hindus in Manipur, where they were murdering Christians.
wow.
But in Punjab, the persecution comes from radical Sikhs.
Sikhs, that's right.
And then in the Akali Dal and things like this, and in Pakistan, nearby, right on the Pakistan border, the persecution, of course, comes from village Islam.
Islam, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jacob. I'm glad the Lord protected you and the believers there while you were there. And of course, we continue to pray for the protection of God's people in there. Now, concerning Australia and New Zealand, what a wonderful time we've had. I'm not going to take too long on it. We are desiring to bring Brother Pierre on soon, and he can share a little bit more about Montreal, New Zealand, and what's going on there with the believers. But it was a wonderful time to be in both places, and we are very thankful for the churches that had us there, such as the one in Sydney and Sutherland Christian Fellowship, and of course in Melbourne. I think it's called the Church on the of the Cross, right, Davey?
Yep,
Pastor
yeah,
Paul Homer.
Cross,
Yeah,
right.
Pastor Paul Homer. So it was wonderful, and we thank the Lord for those churches that had us there. And we had a wonderful time meeting all the believers and different home fellowships and ministries that are there, home gatherings, as well as we rented hotel spaces and things like that. It was absolutely amazing. We met so many wonderful believers that are now, I believe the Lord's calling them to be engaged in gospel preaching, gospel living, and making disciples of their nation and those who are nearby them. And we met so many wonderful young men that are on fire for the Lord, especially up in Queensland. And my heart's with them. My heart's with them, not only in Victoria, such wonderful believers there that met at Davy's house. And but in Perth was awesome as well, Davy. So many the work that the Lord has been gearing up there by working in people's hearts prior us to being there, and setting up the fact that we were there to encourage them and to build them up, and now to go out and make disciples and to live for the Lord and to live for Christ with one another and the fellowship of believers as well. People that drove from different places, different hours. I remember Brother Phil driving for a long ways just to meet with us. People from Tasmania that came to see us. Wonderful. And then New Zealand was the same. Obviously smaller countries, but nonetheless, it was an awesome experience there with Pierre, his family, and hopefully we made an impact there with the believers, not only in Auckland and Christchurch, and Hamilton and Palmy. Where else did we go up there? Hamilton, and of course we were in what was the other city that we went to? I had all these names in my head. We went to 5 different cities. I had it written down. Wellington was awesome. Wellington was so awesome to meet. Warwick and Palmerston North and Christchurch, and of course in Auckland and Hamilton. And I've heard from Pierre that the believers are gathering together. They're believers that are willing to meet together. So it's been an awesome response. And I really encourage the believers there, if they're watching today, if they watch it later, that continue on, because there's a lot more important what happens now than when I was there, sharing and ministering there and teaching, because the work of the kingdom has to continue, and it has to be done by God's people. He'll do the work. He'll bring the people, I should say, but we have to do the work of the kingdom, ministering to them, discipling them. And I think that started, and I pray that it continues in the hearts of people, and they will grow, and it will grow to a wonderful fruit, the fruit of the labor that the Lord has given us. So, Davey, any thoughts on, I can go on and just different things that happen, but it was so many wonderful believers, and some of them are still contacting us. But anything that stood out to you, anything you want to say to the believers in Australia and New Zealand? You were there for all 20 days with me. You were tired. You dragged me across the finish line just to get to the end. But And
I
you
think
did
the
it.
Lord dragged us all across the finish line. At
It
the
was
end, I know
awesome.
we're all exhausted, but look, it was worth it, and I can't wait for the next time. It has been really what we've needed. We've needed someone to bring us all out of hiding, someone just to encourage us, to revive us, to refresh us. With the word, not just with the word, but with fellowship one with another. It was great. Look, I really appreciated the time you took, Marco, to spend with people, and that too was kind of like it really made a difference. I mean, it was kind of like we'd still be there talking with people if it was kind of like, I know it was midnight and it was kind of like we probably really needed to get some rest and stuff like that, but I really appreciate all that time that you spent with people. Fellowship's still happening. It's kind of like, and we're still getting people coming in, emailing who didn't even necessarily attend the conference, but they're wanting to get more involved in fellowship. They're looking for fellowship. I do
Amen.
apologize. I owe a few of you emails in that. We do have a mail out we'll be getting out this week. But yeah, it really has stirred everybody up. People are already connecting. Connections were just happening. It was fantastic, especially like I think of in Perth, we had a couple hadn't met. They met there. They've teamed up. They're going out evangelizing
Amen.
together. Gosh, it's given our little group here such a boost, really, and it was kind of like we're just blown away, Marco, and we really thank you. We thank Community Church of Devore for supporting you. We thank your wife and family, Lord, for for getting behind you, and for allowing this to happen. It was kind of like, I know it was hard being away from your wife
Well,
and
I'm
kids.
glad she was still home when I got back. So I'm glad she was still here.
Yeah, but look, it was a sacrifice, and the people praying too. It's kind of like we needed the prayer.
Amazing.
Special thanks to Steve, to Jay for all those who prayed and took part in prayer groups for us, because we really did need it. And I thank you so much. And look, we're going to see a lot of fruit from this. It's kind of like it's kind of like mind blowing, but it's been super encouraging. So thank you, dear brother, and we can't wait to have you back.
All right. Well, as long as Albanese would have me back, if Albanese's okay for me to come, then I'll be there. But may the Lord bless you guys, and especially the church that meets in your home, and the believers in New Zealand as well. And I can't wait to hear what the Lord does, because there was such good fruit. But I mean, I can name you guys are all in my heart. Put it that way. You haven't stopped being in my heart, and I prayed for you. I remember you with great fondness, and I believe the Lord is only beginning there. And out of a whole 3 years of just madness that's gone in the world, it was so good to be with believers that really want Jesus and they really want to lift him up and pray for each other. There were so many people that came out. They didn't have churches, and they heard we were coming, so they came. They found new fellowships, and it was just so many people that had been hurt, isolated, and the Lord doesn't want us to be an island. He wants us to be connected to fellowship. And I think the Memorial team that helped us out tremendously, and I pray that the Lord will gear up more and more. Memorial Australia, the church is there. Memorial New Zealand and the church is there. There's so many good things, and we're behind you 100%. We're behind you in prayer, and we're putting it where our mouth is. We're putting action to our words. So may the Lord continue to use them. All right. If there's anything else, we can save it for next time. But we do want to bring Pierre to tell us more about what's going on in New Zealand, because it's fantastic, and perhaps we'll hear more about Australia soon, because I think some good things are happening there, especially with the leadership there, Davey. So may the Lord use you guys in tremendous strength that we're going to need for these days. So, in talking about this, Jacob, you ready to catch up?
I'm ready.
All right, Jacob. Riots erupted when I was away last week in your family's home country, which is your mother's home country in Ireland. I don't know if she was born in Dublin, but Dublin was absolutely.
Our family were from Donegal.
Donegal, close enough. Dublin was on fire. Children were stabbed last week. An Algerian-born national went on a stabbing spree, injuring 3 Irish children. Should have been deported, by all accounts. Should have been deported, no doubt, 20 years ago. But thanks to NGOs and the Irish government, he was allowed to even have a passport. He was found guilty of carrying knives back in May of this year. Don't know why he was allowed to continue in that kind of behavior, but Dublin's destruction is quite serious. Several stores been destroyed. Now that calm has set in to an extent, now the real fangs come out from the government, and this is online censorship and the legislation that's coming. You made a great video on it. I encourage people to watch it. It's about what is it called? Ireland Beware, or
Ireland based on Obadiah 15.
Yeah, Obadiah 15. So get a hold of that. If we can put a link to that, people need to watch it. But now that calm to an extent has been restored, Jacob, let's talk. You talked about the illegal immigration and all that's going on. You can rehash it a little bit, but let's talk about what the government is doing. Leo is at a warpath right now in trying to censor not those who committed the crime.
Yeah.
Not those who committed the crime.
Half Hindu homosexual Taoiseach, Prime Minister of Ireland. That's Vatica. The president, who's the titular head of Ireland, chief of state, is a ridiculous, pathetic figure. There are no good political parties of the main parties, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and Sinn Féin. None of them are any good. None of them. There's not a conservative party as such in Ireland. It's not about that. The original Sinn Féin party were Irish nationalists. The current Sinn Féin party is pro-Islamic. The original Sinn Féin meant ourselves alone, ourselves alone. They wanted an Irish nation that was nationalistic, that was Celtic, and that was independent from Britain and other countries. They did not want this immigration. They never would have wanted this kind of immigration policy. 19% of Ireland's population are now immigrants. Many of them are Muslims and radical Muslims, bought in by all three parties, with the blessings of all three parties.
Hey, Jacob, can I give you some stats real quick, just for people to know? In the last 12 months leading up to this year, 141,600 immigrants have landed in Ireland. The Irish population has increased by 2%. That's huge.
Yes, they're Muslims. They're Muslims.
If you were to look at it, just those in the U.S., if you look at it per capita, it's similar to the U.S. expanding by 9 million people. If you're going to look at per capita. Sorry, Jacob, go on. I just want people to realize the enormity of this.
Some were Ukrainians, most were Muslims. Some were Africans. But the largest number will be Muslims.
Yes.
This is absurd. And they're reaping what they sowed. The governments of Ireland are increasingly condemning Israel for standing up to radical Islam, or they're cajoling it. Well, now they're beginning to see what it is. Again, Obadiah 15. I would refer people to the video clip that you mentioned. A warning to Ireland.
Warning to Ireland, yes.
When people stand up, including the boxer, Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
They're being investigated for hate crimes. If you disagree democratically as a matter of free speech with the policies of the left-wing Irish government concerning immigration, they're investigating you for hate speech. They're trying to outlaw opinion. We are 19% foreigner now because of immigration. Many of these people are Muslims who do not share our values. And they're jihadists, they're radical, they're Sharia, they're etc. And if you speak out against it, we consider that to be criminal. This is just a national betrayal of Ireland by its own leadership. And some Irish people are beginning to see it, but they're standing up.
Yeah.
And being castigated as right-wing hate crime extremists when they're not. It's like the United States. The Irish police are called the Gardaí, meaning the guards.
Yes.
They've been politicized and turned into a political police force, much the same as Obama and Biden have done with the FBI under Garland. They've turned it into a political police force. They're out to arrest anybody who criticizes government policy on immigration, bringing these people in, even though Irish children are being stabbed. They just don't care.
They don't care about that.
No. Additionally, you have going back to a woman called Mary Robinson, you have a disgusting feminist element in Irish government and parliament called the Dial. They don't understand geopolitics, and they don't understand economic realities. All they understand is the woke feminist agenda or the woke narrative. They can recite the woke narrative like a Catholic can a catechism, but they don't, they don't really understand it. People who quote from the Baltimore Catechism don't understand biblical theology. Well, people who quote from a feminist agenda or a woke narrative, they don't really understand economic and geopolitical reality. And that's what you've got here.
I think they were quoting Das Kapital. I think they were quoting Das Kapital.
There doesn't seem to be any women in Irish government who have common sense.
Yeah, what's up with this whiteness that they were trying to attack? It was all whiteness.
Yeah,
The problem was whiteness.
The vision of Eamon de Valera, who was born in New York, okay? He was the first Taoiseach, the first prime minister. His vision, and he was the leader of Fianna Fáil, his vision was to have a Celtic Ireland. The original IRA was to have an Irish nationalist country, an Irish Republican country that would be identified as culturally Irish. Now they associated that with Roman Catholicism and a lot of other things, but they wanted it to be Irish. What you're seeing now is a departure from the original beliefs of the founders of Irish republicanism and the founders of the Irish Republic. It's not what De Valera wanted. He wanted a Celtic country. It's not what Sinn Féin wanted. They were Irish nationalists. What you have now is a left-wing woke agenda that's globalist that has gotten control of these parties, but do not subscribe to the ideologies of these parties.
Yeah. This is insane. I mean, I'll read what Conor McGregor said, the UFC fighter says, we won't back down. Ireland is at war. We bring in people that don't care about us. They don't care about our children. We're not losing any more women or children to twisted people who shouldn't be in Ireland in the first place. Call it what you wanted. We don't care. May God help us. Ireland for victory. So he's tweeting this, and the actual prime minister, Leo, begins to attack him personally and says, "We're
Radica, the homosexual, half Hindu."
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to put Radica and Connor into a boxing ring in a fight to the death match and see who comes out.
Can we get that on? Can we get that on pay-per-view? Can we get that pay-per-view? I mean, I like to call Dana White, the UFC promoter, and just say that'll be a really good fight.
That'd be a great fight.
Yeah,
that'd be a great fight.
I'd put Radica and Conor McGregor in a ring.
And you heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first. If it happens, Jacob called it. But they investigate him like if he's some kind of radical terrorist. And anyone who criticizes the government or says, now listen to this, if you say Irish lives matter, it is a hate crime. You could be taken in and investigated for a hate crime, just like people in Ireland, just like McGregor. So do Irish lives matter anymore? I don't know.
A Muslim says Allahu Akbar and stabs a 6-year-old. That's not a hate crime. If you say Irish lives matter, that's a hate crime.
That is. Sinn Féin says, MP Paul Maskey described the signs saying, or any signs that says Irish lives matters as disgraceful. He says, if you say Irish lives matter is disgraceful and it's anti-immigration, it's anti-human, and it's erected to create fear and intimidate people. This is from Sinn Féin, the MP Paul Maskey. I don't know if Maskey's a...
That hypocrite is not telling you
that
although they may have not used the words Irish lives matter, that is exactly what the IRA and Sinn Féin said after the Derry massacres.
Really?
That is exactly what they said. That is exactly what they said after the killing of the 1314 in Derry. That is exactly what they themselves said. Now they've departed from it. Nobody in their right mind can believe Sinn Féin of today is the Sinn Féin of yesterday. Nobody can believe the Fianna Fáil or the Fine Gael of yesterday is the Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael of today. As I keep saying, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Fine me somebody better to vote for.
Jacob, you having, obviously your family from Ireland, your mom's family. I mean, how do you see this and you see the deterioration of society, just like the UK, just like your home country, the US. I mean, you have to be outraged at this. This is not like you're going to take this passively. this is insanity what they're doing to kids, Christians, especially believers in Ireland.
Yes. Well, Ireland has always kept its mouth shut when people knew priests and nuns were molesting children daily. It was always suppressed and kept quiet. You could not speak out against the Roman Catholic Church despite the child abuse and pedophilia. Even though it was known it was going on, you couldn't say anything about it. What they've done now is taken that same mindset and applied it to Islam.
Wow.
People know what goes, but you can't say anything about it.
Is this cultural? Is this a cultural thinking or just
combination? It's a combination of well, Ireland has an alcoholic culture. It's got a very high degree of alcohol abuse. Very high. Ireland spends a higher percentage of disposable income on alcohol than most of the other countries in Europe. It's got this mentality where the people they have guilt because of Catholicism. There's a guilt thing.
Mea culpa, yeah.
Mea culpa, because the blood of Christ does not take away all sin. You have to atone for your own in purgatory. They carry guilt. Okay, they don't have a Christian gospel. They have a Roman gospel. Okay, so there's the guilt. The guilt is compounded, of course, by the sexual abuses perpetrated against children by the church. But you're not allowed to talk about it. So what did the people do? They would take to the drink. They would take to the drink. That is, alcoholism was basically, it was bred. An alcoholic culture was bred in Ireland. Now, I'm not against somebody having a drink or a pint of Guinness or whatever, but I remember that when I was a kid walking through the streets of Killarney in Ireland, seeing when the pubs closed, all the drunks in the street that looked like the Bowery in Manhattan. And every town was like that. Just what alcohol has, the only place I've seen it's not just the Irish, the Welsh, the Scottish, Celtic cultures have a lot of alcohol abuse. Celtic cultures. But the only thing I've seen worse than Ireland in my life is Aboriginal Australians in Alice Springs. They're the only ones I've seen with the worst alcohol problem in Ireland. But it is absolutely shocking. It's a drunk mentality. Buy Paddy a pint and he'll sign anything. There's no conservative or liberal. The parties are not about that. It goes back to the Irish Civil War. Were you pro-treaty or anti-treaty with Britain? Did you follow Collins or did you follow De Valera? That's what it's about. There's no ideological correspondence to the parties. It's not about that. And then Sinn Féin, the Sinn Féin of today is not the Sinn Féin of yesterday. Oh, it's racist. It's terrible to say Irish lives matter. That is exactly what they said after the Derry shootings. And now they changed their tune. It's just complete hypocrisy. Something else I pointed out.
Yeah, go ahead.
I understand why Sinn Féin is sympathetic to Palestinian radicalism. It's because they did the same thing themselves in Omagh with the Omagh bombings when they killed children. They even killed Catholic children the way that Hamas will kill and cause to be killed Arab children. The IRA would kneecap their own people up the Falls Road and in Anderson Town. They oppressed their own people, the same as Hamas oppressed their own people. So I understand why the IRA of today, which is not the IRA of Michael Collins, it's not the one who won independence. These guys are basically more terrorists and gangsters who pretend to be the historical IRA and engage in terror and crime under the banner of religious freedom or Irish nationalism. But it's not about that. It's not the real IRA. It's not the real Sinn Féin, but it's the one we've got. There is no political voice in Ireland of any major party who's standing out or speaking up. So when individuals speak up, the three parties will come together and try to criminalize free speech.
Yeah.
Go out and get a pint. keep your mouth shut and go out and get a pint. The way you had to shut up about when the priest molested your little brother. Go out and get a pint, Patty. That's what they're saying.
Wow. Thank you, Jacob. That's pretty good insight in terms of what's going on there, because it looks like they're turning against white males and white privilege, and it's such a self-hatred because every one of those in the parliament. What do they call the parliament there, Jacob? You talked about it.
Wow.
And they were Anglo-Saxon heritage. They were Irish heritage. They are white themselves, and the problem is white privilege. I mean, are they self-hating to that degree?
It's like the stupid white liberals in the United States.
It reminded me of them. It totally reminded me of them.
Same mentality.
Oh, now now the legislation. Now we talked about it here back in May or April of this year, where they had that Christian teacher go to court because he would not use different pronouns for transgender. So he actually, I'm not sure if he lost his job or not, but that he was pretty much in trouble with the courts, and because Ireland already had a online speech and a speech basically curtailing any speech already. Now, Leo Varadkar is asking for a stronger, a more defiant online speech controlling surveillance crackdown on anyone voicing any dissident or irreversible change that wants irreversible changes in their country. So, or doesn't want irreversible changes in their country, basically.
Why wouldn't he? He was homosexual.
Yeah.
He's homosexual. You have to understand Ireland. Before the 1970s, it began to change. Ireland has always had an issue with homosexuality and lesbianism. Always. It was always there. Because the father was down at the pub getting drunk, Irish families became matriarchies.
Okay.
So little boys don't have a positive father figure.
Got it.
They go to a mommy becomes daddy. So you always had this problem with homosexuality in Ireland, even though they didn't have legalized divorce. Daddy was down at the pub drunk. Not all of them, but on a wide scale. So it's always had this kind of issue in Ireland. But they had an outlet. The outlet was called the priesthood and the convent. A priest would go into Maynooth to their seminary, and in an all-male environment, they'd put on cassocks, they'd dress like women, okay? And being a priest was a socially acceptable way to be a homosexual. The overwhelming majority, not just in Ireland, but certainly in Ireland, of the child molestation. Remember, every bishop in Ireland has been caught protecting homosexuals. Every bishop in Ireland has been caught protecting homosexual clergy at the expense of not protecting the children, okay? It's overwhelmingly of a homosexual nature. Not all of it. Some of it is heterosexual. They had one priest who was molesting little girls on their first communion. They'd get dressed up like little brides in white. He was laying them down on the altar and raping them, and there's 10 that they can prove. And the Gardaí, the detective who investigated it, made the evidence disappear, and he got an award from the Pope, from the Vatican.
Wow.
That's how corrupt Ireland is. Well, the priesthood, the clergy, was the socially acceptable way to be a homosexual in Ireland and get access to children. Nuns were similar. I've spoken to nuns who've gotten saved from Ireland. I have some dear friends, a brother and a sister. He was a priest, she was a nun 34 years. And they'll tell you, some of the nuns were whores for priests. The convents were whorehouses. But those had a big problem. In just one convent, in Tuam, they found 900 dead babies buried in the courtyard on back of the convent. Just one. The Gardaí reckons that there could be up to 10,000. The Ryan report told what happened in the Magdalene laundries. It is unbelievable. The shock, holding these girls as slaves and sex slaves. The priests would get them pregnant, and then the families would give them over to be enslaved in these Magdalene laundries by law.
Wow.
Well, and it comes out in the Ryan report. They made a film about it called The Magdalene Sisters.
That's it. That's the one.
The film people should see. But then with the nuns, it was, okay, if they weren't whores for priests, if they were a butch type lesbian, they would take the name Sister Michael Patrick. If they were a girly lesbian, they take the name like Sister Elizabeth Mary. You know what I mean? Or if they swung both ways, they would take the name like Sister Beatrice Joseph. You know, that's how they would tell. They'd get their head shaved to look like men. They'd be in an all-female environment, you know, so lesbians could become nuns, and priests could, and male homosexuals could become priests, or they could become Irish Christian brothers, and both would give them access to children. That's the way it went. But when things began to change, and Ireland joined the EU, and social pressures began to come into Ireland from the continent and from England, it began to change. Homosexuals and lesbians came out of the convent, which in Ireland, coming out of the closet meant coming out of the convent or coming out of the rectory. Okay. Wow. It was a decline in religious vocations in Ireland out of Maynooth. Ireland used to produce more priests than it needed, wow, but not anymore. Now, some years, nobody graduates their seminary in Maynooth because the homosexuals don't have to live that way anymore. You don't have to go into the Roman Catholic clergy to find expression for your orientation. So this is what happens. Ireland is the first country to have a homosexual prime minister, at least a declared one. Some people think Keith was one, but no one ever definitively proved it. But with Radical, he's a homosexual and he's half Hindu. And that's why he's pushing this.
Yeah. And no doubt he is on a rampage to curtail any online speech that they deem to be offensive and hatred. And like I said, even saying Irish Lives Matter will be considered offensive in a hate line in an online speech. And by the way, they were regulating other companies. They were regulating Facebook and YouTube, and I don't know if it wasn't on that video that I watched with Jay, but or that I showed you guys earlier, but it went on. Leo went on and he talked about the only one, it was interesting, that has not cooperated with them. Online platform, social media company was Twitter, or known as X now. Yeah. And he went on to talk about Elon Musk and how he's terrible. He doesn't regulate, the speech that they want. So all this stuff, he says, it's out there against us. It's on Twitter, and he needs to be held accountable. Well, they're going after Elon Musk because he's not willing to do that for the Irish government.
Yeah. Well, you see, the Irish government has another issue. Because of their tax laws and because of Brexit, a lot of American high-tech companies from Silicon Valley use Dublin as the European base. They have a tax advantage for doing so. But most of the revenue goes to a small number of people. A very small number of people financially profit from it, although the government profits from it. Most of the people don't. And it's driven up the cost of living and the cost of rents and the cost of houses in Dublin, right through the ceiling, right through the roof. So these American high-tech companies have been both a blessing and a curse. They've been both a blessing and a curse. So it's interesting to see what he's going to do about Elon Musk.
Yeah, he's basically, I've seen videos of just somebody showing a house in Dublin, and there's a line out the door. Out the door, down the block, down to the other street of just wanting to see the house, just to even put a bid on it. It is the house shortage is a catastrophe. And by the way, as somebody pointed it out, it didn't look like too many Irish people were in line to get it either. No. So it's a big mess. Jacob, I think the only other country that could beat out Ireland, as crazy as those laws that are coming in are, the only other country that seems to do is Canada. Justin Trudeau just introduced Bill C-36 that, notice this, is going to criminalize any online speech, not just investigating, criminalize, that is perceived to incite hatred against a protected class under the Human Rights Act. So if you are deemed to be basically saying something derogatory or deemed derogatory against another person or Islam or homosexuality, it would be an attack on human rights. So it would be criminal. And so these are harsh penalties that all a judge needs to know is that he has reason to believe that you may, and notice this, that you may commit a crime based on your speech violations in the future. So pre-crime punishment is coming to Canada. Jacob, this is insanity.
It is
Who would
absolute insanity.
Oh my goodness.
The pace at which democracy is disintegrating is unbelievable.
Canada is just an absolute madness. Jay, I'm sorry, Jay, you wanted to say something?
Well, to Jacob's point with both Canada and Ireland, I mean, I can't help but go to what Isaiah said in chapter 3, verse 12. Childish leaders oppress my people, and women rule over them. Oh, my people, your leaders mislead you. They send you down the wrong road. And with Trudeau, with the Irish Dial, they're sending them down the road for destruction.
Yes. We read the same thing in the book of Nahum, the exact same thing.
It is happening. I mean, who would have thought crime and pre-crime? I mean, you have this in the UK, they had this survey done, 18 to 34-year-olds who were talking about what they're going to ban. And 1834s will love to ban the Bible in the UK. So you're talking about speech. You can't say things. You can't say even things that are true and real and reality. If you even say them, they can pre-crime you in Canada. That's also a thing that are coming on in the US with artificial intelligence. But now in the UK, a block of people, 25%, it's among 18 to 34-year-olds would ban the Bible because the way society is going, that we don't want any hate speech, we don't want anything that seems like hatred. So the Bible has hatred, so we have to ban it.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if they're going to ban the Quran, because the Quran has plenty of that.
Oh, no, in the UK, there is a cowardice you see in the British government, and you particularly see it in the BBC, where there's two standards. For instance, BBC had a quote-unquote Jerry Springer opera where Jesus was homosexual. They never would do that about Muhammad. Never. The Muslims would riot. They'd burn the BBC to the ground. They can do it about Christians. And I saw one hypocrite after another patting themselves on the back and shaking hands, congratulating each other for their courage of standing up for artistic freedom of expression. They never would do that with Islam. Never. The hypocrisy you see in the BBC is phenomenal, but the hypocrisy you see in the British government is co-equally phenomenal.
Yeah, that is, it is unreal. But to us, as Christians, when you talk about censoring free speech, censoring online speech, censoring memes, I mean, in Ireland, you can go to jail for a meme. You can go to jail for posting a picture, a post, a tweet, but now you're making it pre-crime that the police can come into your home and say, well, we think you're going to do it. And we can go into your house and take books and find out what you really, really believe.
Or
Jacob,
homosexual policeman can plant evidence.
Bingo. And nowadays with artificial intelligence, you can actually post something or create an image that looks real and put it as if you were doing it, or so if you said it, or if you did it. So we're dealing with that. And as Christians, it's about the gospel, isn't it, Jacob? It's about preaching the truth in the Bible. And those things seem to be now conflicting with the spirit of the world. And now it is coming to a head where now the governments are going to say, you can't say this. You can't post this. Look what happened to the MP in Finland. Look what happened to the young lady that prayed outside the abortion clinic in silence. She was arrested. So all these things are coming to pass very quickly. And I just wonder if Christians realize what in the world is going on and do something about it in terms of prayer, fellowship, continue to preach the word, because we're heading into a real dilemma as a Christian. Are you going to be able to preach Jesus Christ? And are you willing
when are the pre-tribulation advocates going to wake up and sniff the coffee and welcome themselves to the real world and stop living in their religious delusion that was invented by John Darby and those who paid attention to that despot? When are the pre-trib people going to wake up to reality? When is Tom Hughes going to stop it? Hanging around with false teachers and crackpots like Andy Wood. When are you going to stop it, Tom Hughes? When are you going to wake up and look at the realities of the way the world is going and stop propagating a lie and making Christians believe in a lie? Persecution is what's coming. Persecution is what's coming. Antichrist is what's coming, Tom Hughes, and you ought to know better.
I guess he's going to Queensland to promote that message, and he's going to New Zealand as well. I think Auckland, right?
Tell you what, Tom, I'll debate you anytime as long as it's in front of a camera live streams. I'll debate you, Tom Hughes, because I no longer trust you and I no longer respect you. And I don't think anyone else should either.
And $50 a head, I don't know what he's going to charge for the live stream.
65. 65
Oh,
if you
65.
in Australian actually.
Wow.
Oh, just to get in the door and hear some of that stuff, Jacob. Come on. That's got to be worth something, right?
But I have a second condition. We make it free.
Mm.
Hmm.
He
I
might
like
not go for it. He might not go for it then.
He needs to make money.
Jay, I think your mic was muted when you were saying it was really profound. It was awesome about Isaiah online. People couldn't hear you. I wonder if they can hear you now, but could you repeat that about
Sure.
Isaiah? Yeah.
So I was just mentioning that Trudeau and the Irish dial. It reminds me so much of what Isaiah said in Isaiah 3, chapter 12. Childish leaders oppress my people, and women rule over them. O my people, your leaders mislead you. They send you down the wrong road. And that is exactly where the politicians like Trudeau and the Prime Minister of Ireland and the women in the dial are sending them. They're sending them down the nightmare that George Orwell had. That's where they're sending them.
That's interesting, isn't it? But Jay, would you say that about leaders in the church who are promoting things that are not in the Bible and heading us to a path that you can't even imagine what we're heading toward?
Those are the people that when God talks about brother handing over brother,
Yes.
the people that accept homosexuality and celebrate it inside the church are the exact same people who will send people to the death camps, death chamber, and beheadment by this new fascist ideology that wants to ban the Bible.
Andy Stanley, Tony Campola, and Satan's various other agents in the church.
And there were
something, Davey.
Oh, I was going to say, and just on that too, and they're worse than women because they're totally emasculated. They've got no guts. They've got no, they don't stand up for the truth. But yeah, just getting back to the other two, it's kind of like we need to hold them accountable with their own laws. They're bringing in all this sort of pre-crime forts and all the rest of it. But look, they're hypocrites and they contradict themselves, you know, with their own words, and we need to hold them to the same standard. And we cannot cower in fear because of this. I think a lot of the reason they're doing this is to make people cower down in submission and just, you know, not say anything. We still have to be bold. We still have to say things. We may need to use wisdom when we say things, but we still need to be bold and say them. They're doing this to deliberately make people cower. But use their own things against them. It's kind of like, okay, Trudeau, pre-crime thing. Okay, yeah, weren't you caught doing blackface stuff, Trudeau? I mean, all these people, we watched a video earlier of all these people in the Irish Parliament, you know, suddenly they know what a man is. Suddenly they know what a woman is. They also, you know, use their stuff against them. Okay, it's the white males that are the problem. Okay, what? How do you know I'm white? How do you know I'm male? I could be a black female lesbian for all you know. It's kind of like use their own stuff against them.
Amen. No, it's wisdom in that. I mean, it back to the suppressing of the gospel and people wants to ban the Bible. What wasn't a church? Wasn't it her own church who betrayed the Finnish MP? Pavi Rasmussen, her church turned her in. So to Jay's point about these leaders, these church leaders that don't believe that sending us down the right path with wrong theology, wrong doctrine, wrong, even if they think they have the right motives, they will be the ones who would sign up to ban the Bible just to keep their status quo in our society and to keep their status quo as a religious person in this world, as a respected religious person, while believers, the rest of believers who are counting the costs, are going to be prosecuted for a crime of just simply preach. I mean, Jacob, you can correct me if I'm wrong. With the conservative government in the UK, you had preachers being arrested for preaching the gospel.
Absolutely.
You had
Not
a
radical
lady,
Muslims, not homosexual activists, only Christians.
the lady that was praying in front of an
That's
abortion,
it.
that was under a conservative government.
Yes. Well, now these things get fought and challenged in court, but
Yes.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, the UN is launching a global digital ID, and this is going to touch probably every one of us that deals with technology and the internet. And it's a totalitarian nightmare, to say the least.
Sorry, Mark, just to add to your question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Since Margaret Thatcher, there's been no conservative government in Great Britain.
Mm.
She was the last real conservative.
I guess we have to say under the Tories, right? The new Tories or whatever we call them now. Yeah. Because,
There's
yeah,
no-
you're right. I agree.
No
I
more
agree.
conservative party since Margaret Thatcher.
Oh,
What a mess.
it's the same for America and the Republicans. There are no conservatives. There's
No.
the Freedom Caucus, and then there's
Yes.
the rhinos. So
Mhm.
you know what did Jesus say? A house divided cannot stand.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
you're seeing that. You're seeing that plainly with how dysfunctional conservative government is supposedly ruling.
Yeah.
Yes.
And to your point, Jay, you know, what gets me frustrated is when you see Christian leaders and pastors and that would actually subscribe to this idea that the government is going to help us. We need to support these types of governments in order to regain our freedoms back, you know, take back America. I mean, I go on a website and it's supposed to be about, you know, the gospel, but it's really about, you know, freedom, this, freedom, that. And what they're talking about is just joining with political movements in order to gain our freedoms back. And I say that's a dangerous road to go down the line and hoping that some politician is going to give them back to you.
You know, Psalm 146, it says, "Do not put your trust in princes and mortal men who cannot save." And
Amen.
too many times we have religious leaders doing the exact opposite. Put your trust in this man. He's been confirmed and anointed by God. Well, why don't you let the Lord determine that? Not you. Oh, man.
And what about those leaders who send us on the road? It says, hey, nothing bad's going to happen. You know, we're going to go see the Lord without anybody. There's not going to be any problems, no issues. Just get ready. I mean, that's really what is promoted in light of all the problems in the world. That's the answer. And I don't hear anybody saying the answer is we need to preach the gospel of the kingdom, you know, to all nations, and then the end will come. Nobody quotes that. Nobody wants to even talk about that.
They're the lying prophets in the time of Jeremiah, speaking only smooth things.
Yep.
No evil shall befall on us, is what they said, right? The UN launches this digital ID, and Jay, you had some experience with this because you've had to deal with Microsoft and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's ambitious campaign, they call it, to try to bring Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, which I have no idea what it means, by trying to curtail you from online speech, you know, but it's part of it. The future is digital, they say, and you have to sustain it. How are you going to sustain it? Well, we need digital payments. We need a digital ID. We need an exchange system. This is part of the UN initiative. But Jay, you ran into Microsoft having some interesting digital, I say firewalls now.
Yes. So it used to be that you could log in to Microsoft 365. And once you logged in on your computer, you would never log out. You could just keep it perpetually open and never have to re-log in. Well, now with this new app that they've rolled out, every time you log into your email or want to use your Word document or use your Excel, you have to obviously get into Microsoft 365, which needs a face to verify that you are the user, tied to a cell phone.
Wow. That's kind of what, you know, Davey, you and I experienced that. Well, obviously not you because you're an Australian citizen, but I had to come to Australia I had to take a picture of my face with my phone, send it to the government in order to be verified so I can walk in. Now they've been doing it for a long time at the airport, but now you have to do it before, and it's a form of a digital ID before you even get into the country now. It's a mess. But now to just even work we talk about just the aspect of working on Microsoft, it's being it basically is a digital ID with your face on it. And so this is what the next level is. In order to get into the internet, and this is the ultimate goal of the UN, Bill Gates Foundation, the WWF, you're going to have a digital ID. You're going to verify this is you in order to do it, because there's so many, scams on the internet. There's so many bad people on the dark web. So this digital world is going to allow you to have a digital ID in order to enter the internet. So to do any internet commerce work, it'll be a digital ID. And David, you can shed a little more light into this. In Australia, Malcolm Roberts from Queensland was talking about this, that the Labor government is pushing ahead with this globalist control agenda, introducing this digital ID bill, and it's passed the first 3 stages. In the proposal, it's his words, nothing more than 21st century Soviet style basically control.
Yes.
And any thoughts on this?
Yeah. Look, this was done pretty much by stealth. There has been, if you ask the average Joe on the street, they don't know about it because the media have deliberately been keeping it silent. They've been keeping it, under wraps. I only found out that it was coming up, in Parliament on Wednesday. I only found out like the day before it was going to be happened. But this is going to disadvantage 28% of the population. 28% of the population here do not have, don't do electronic banking. They don't have smartphone. They don't have computer. There's 28% of the population they're basically going to throw under the bus. Now, we've been seeing this ramp up here for a while. We even saw it, little elements of it while we were traveling around. Like in Perth, you cannot use the rail system without, it's all tap and go. It's all cashless. You can see this push all heading towards this digital ID. I know we're going to have to rethink a few things too when we have shared accounts. I use them at work. Again, we're Microsoft dependent at work too. I know they have brought in for the retail people. I've got to be careful what I say here, where you can only log into your thing using a device that you wear. And basically that's your ID to log in and access the work computers now. And it's been causing a lot of problems and a lot of headache for the staff this weekend. So the system's not foolproof, but they're pushing it regardless. It's like full steam ahead and they don't really care.
Yeah, it's in the EU, the G20s, the G20 countries are pushing it, a digital world, obviously in the EU and in the US with the cybersecurity bill that's coming to pass. That's why so much of this election and coming 2024, it's interesting because they're calling for cognitive security here in the States. Now, what that means is basically misinformation and disinformation. It's pollution. So we need to wipe it off your mind, cognitive security, right? And I'll wipe it off the internet from people. And it's really a call for mind control. Jacob, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, cybersecurity bill, online bill, digital bill. You can't say this. You can't. I mean, it is a complete lockdown surveillance system that's coming. And there's ahead of this is the spirit of Antichrist. And of course, the Antichrist will be.
When we combine it with AI, we see what it's coming to. Look, all of these technologies and their convergence and the laws that are being made to use them to suppress free speech, or even criminalize free speech, it's going towards Revelation 13. That is what it's coming to. It's all converging towards Revelation 13. There's no doubt. It'll come down to some kind of a system that will not simply be electronic, but we're told the image of the beast will be animated. Can we imagine microchips that are not made from silicone, but are made from carbon?
Carbon, yeah.
It's going to be animated. It'll somehow be able to be a superhuman likeness of a human who is Antichrist, that will be able to control all the known data in the world.
Incredible.
It's coming to that. Yeah, it is coming to that.
Yeah.
That is the way it is heading. And that is what's going to happen. Now, as Christians, we know it. Well, at least some Christians know it. The Bible believing Christians know it. The pre-tribulation people, they don't have a clue, apparently. They don't seem to read the book of Revelation. They think it's not important because they're not going to be here.
It's a lot of thought of that theology is like that, that certain things don't apply to the church, so we can't, we
Yes.
shouldn't read it anymore. Jacob, on the one hand, we see this, and we agree on where this is heading in that trajectory. Some people say, well, it seems to be that the right-wing libertarians are winning, because look what happened with Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, with Javier Milei in Argentina. Are they right? Are we seeing maybe the pendulum swing the other way?
As we saw with Brexit or the election of Donald Trump, there may be intermittent periods of respite. There may be intermittent periods of respite. I think there could be. I'd like to believe that what's happened in Argentina and the Netherlands, and remember the Netherlands, they've got, unfortunately, proportional representation. He's going to have to build a coalition and make compromises.
Yeah,
so
no.
he's going to have a mandate to do what he wants. But be that as it may, yeah, I can see intermittent periods of respite. The Bible has always compared it to maternal labor. The contractions ease up for intermittent periods, but then come back with a greater ferocity and intensity.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens. There can be an easing up, and there will be periods, but then we'll come back with a greater period of intensity. They get enraged. That's the nature. The left gets enraged.
Oh yeah, they're calling for his head. They're calling for his head now.
You just look for 2.5 years. They spoke about it as if it were a de facto, incontrovertible, established fait accompli that Donald Trump was guilty of collusion with Putin and the Russians. Okay, that the election was rigged by. Okay, they were not that you had these demonized hags, whatever they are, on The View, talking this garbage as if it was a fact. That Holston, that stupid woman, as if it was. I'm not trying to revile, but she is. I don't know how else to put it. They talk about these things that they were facts. Well, when they turn out not to be facts, they expect everybody to ignore they were wrong. But then when Trump says the election was rigged, they say this is absurd, this is insane. They did the same thing. It's just the hypocrisy knows no end.
No, you're right, Jacob. What was that letter? Did you have that letter, Geert Wilders to Joe Biden?
I have one. It's too long to read.
No problem.
But he points out the history of Islam. He points out the very high percentage of Muslims living in the West who believe in jihad, who believe Sharia is more authoritative than the Constitution of the United States or the democratic bodies of law in Europe. They believe this. They immigrate under false pretenses, swearing loyalty to the Constitution, but not believing it. They lie. They should be denationalized and deported. These people should be denationalized and deported because they've immigrated under fraudulent pretenses. A very high percentage, possible majority of Muslims have immigrated to the West under fraudulent pretenses.
I know a couple of congresswomen like that.
Yeah, there's people in Congress. They should have no right to be in the country unless they're in prison. Okay, they may have a right to be in the country if you can find a reason to lock them up in prison. But other than that, they shouldn't be in the country. Okay, he shows these things. He shows what these people believe. But what's more frightening is the demographic. We're importing these people left and right. Again, Ireland, 19% immigrant population. Okay, some is Ukrainian, etc. Some is Black African, but the largest number is Muslim. You look at Germany, you look at France, surrounded the Benelux, surrounding Paris. It's surrounded by Islamic ghettos. Paris is surrounded. It's literally encompassed. You look at Bradford, England, Birmingham, England, much of Manchester, England, and much of London. There are no-go areas. He's pointing out that within 12 years, by some estimates, one study in San Diego, California, that 25% of the population of Western Europe will be Muslim.
Yeah,
One
that's
out of
true.
4 people. They become a voting bloc you can't ignore. When somebody's got 1 out of 4 votes, you can't ignore them. They have a political say because you've stupidly given it to them, forgetting the fact that Westerners, Christians, Jews have no say in our country.
Mm.
They leave this sewage pit that the Muslim world is. It's largely a sewage pit, except for the extremely wealthy petrostates that are small, the Emirates and so forth. The Muslim world is a sewage pit. It's third world, it's a sewage pit. They leave that sewage pit, come to the West, and bring the sewage with them. Now, I don't blame them for wanting to leave the sewage pit, but please leave the sewage back where you came from.
Yeah, they want to Islamize
That's
the
correct.
new place where they are. Yeah, Sharia law. I mean, I remember one Jewish producer, Avi, and he went to Minnesota, and he's watching, and I'm watching this video. It's a great video to watch, and he's asking, people in Minnesota, and he goes to the Somalian area, and he asking Somalian teenagers born here, grandkids. I mean, it's quite a generation now of Somalians in Minnesota. And he's asking them, do you want Sharia law or the Constitution? And it says, all the kids, Sharia law, Sharia law. So what would these kids want to do with the Constitution anymore? They don't want it. They want Sharia law in Minnesota.
The way we were betrayed by the Bush family and by the Bush administration and by the Clinton administration, and above all by Obama, just bringing these people in. The only one who stood up and warned in America was Donald Trump, and they called him an Islamophobe for telling the truth.
Yeah, you remember, Jacob, we were in Santa Barbara, maybe 2006, 2007, and you were talking about Gert Wilders, that he was right, and what he was saying was right. Now this is,
I said he was right nearly 20 years ago. Yes.
Yeah, and they almost put him in jail. They put him under not house arrest, but literally protection agencies because they wanted to kill him. Now he wins, and now he was right. And nobody wants to admit he was right. Now, I want to talk about Javier Milei real quick, president of Argentina. Pretty interesting guy. I mean, you're talking about a libertarian, but really kind of comedy, funny guy. But boy, he tells the truth. Jacob, are we cautiously optimistic about this man in Argentina?
My one reservation about him is not that he is an economic libertarian. I am pretty much as well. But he is a social libertarian.
Mm.
That is the problem. He would, not completely. He is pro-life.
Yes, he is. He's very pro-life.
He is pro-life, but he does have social libertarian policies.
Yeah, he wants to legalize prostitution, drug abuse.
Like and recreational drug use and things.
Open borders. The big open borders guy, which I don't understand, but. So I mean, cautiously optimistic on certain things, but also
he's pro-Israel, he's pro-American. He realizes the Peronistas in Argentina have always turned that country into mud. If you look at their legacy, going back to the 1920s even, and 1930s, Argentina at one time was the 7th wealthiest country in the world.
But wasn't there a saying, Jacob?
Economy in the world was Argentina.
Yeah, wasn't there a saying you're rich as an Argentine? It was
the wealthiest country in Latin America for sure, but it was one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Not only that, but although it was located in Latin America, it was really a European type country.
It was like a European country,
more like Spain and Italy than it was the rest of Latin America, most of it. Okay, the Peronistas, who were politically fascist, aligned to Mussolini and Franco.
Yes.
They did the country no favors economically or politically. So between the left and the Peronistas, you had a choice between two bad guys. Javier is the first person who's come along in a long time that is a third choice between the Peronistas and the left.
Yeah. What do you make of this going and praying at the tomb of Schneerson?
Look, I appreciate his love for Israel, but by any biblical criteria, Menachem Schneerson from Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn was a proven false prophet and a
Mm.
false messiah.
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating. He loves Israel so much. Anything Jewish, he loves Kabbalah,
Yes.
Israel, the IDF. I mean, he's an interesting guy, but boy, that was really, really
Yes.
weird going to
He
Schneerson.
literally went to Queens to Schneerson's grave where they have the vigil because the Lubavitch, the Chabad, think he's going to raise from the dead.
I don't know. I don't know what to say. He's more interested than anything else. Plus his ties to the WEF with the World Economic Forum.
Yes.
I spoke to some believers from
That is the wedge.
Argentina. Yeah, and from Latin America, that they're cautiously optimistic, but they believe that maybe there's some freedom coming and some stability coming to a country that has suffered so much. They've suffered so much, inflation through the roof. The World Economic Forum has destroyed that country to the degree that Schwab has basically said that we're so happy to have many World Economic Forum leaders within the government. Maybe they'll clean it out. I don't know.
I do believe that a lot of what has happened to Argentina, bad things, have been a judgment because of anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
There's
and
a
even
lot
though
of
there's a lot of Jewish people
Yeah.
there. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a lot
but-
of population.
but I mean, Jews have not had it easy in Argentina. There's always
No.
been a lot of anti-Semitism in Argentina, and that goes back, of course, to the Peronistas.
Yeah, bringing in the Nazis. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was that, and then the left, of course. And you also had a big Arab Muslim population
Hmm.
in Buenos Aires
Hmm.
that's been there since the 1950s.
Interesting.
It's another factor. So I do think anti-Semitism has been a reason, but the worst was with Galtieri when he grabbed the Falkland Islands, the Maldives.
Oh, yeah.
That was just insanity, and he messed with the wrong lady, Margaret
Oh,
Thatcher.
that's it. Yeah, that
Messed
was.
with the wrong lady. The economy was collapsing, so he played the nationalist card and invaded the Falklands, thinking
Yeah.
the British wouldn't do anything. But then they found out he couldn't. Not only could he not run the economy, he couldn't fight a war either. At least not.
No, not at all. And we're coming right to the end of catching up, and we're going to be going on backstage because we are going to talk about something very important, which is what China and the CCP may be doing. And I'll leave it at that because I know the YouTube algorithms will pick it up. But you might want to stay for that one. If you're watching Catching Up, go to backstage. It'll come not on YouTube and not on Facebook, but we're going to have to go to the other platforms as well to
We'd
find
like to
out.
remind all of our viewers, Marco, as always, please don't watch us on YouTube. We have Moriel.tv, morieltv.org, and we have Rumble. We have alternative platforms. Please watch us on one of our own servers, Moriel.tv or morieltv.org, or watch us on Rumble. Please don't watch us on YouTube. YouTube is just a feeder to redirect traffic to where we can't be closed down or censored.
So we're not going to be on backstage. Will not be on those platforms just because of the nature of the topic. But we're going to talk about China and the CCP and what's going on there. Now, Jacob, as we finish, a couple of things is Schumer comes out and before Congress says we got to stop this anti-Semitism. He hooks up with the ADL and says we need to stop this anti-Semitism in the schools. No doubt he's right about that. You got crazy campuses, college campuses, high school campuses. You got a teacher in a high school that has to go and hide in the closet because the students, 400 of them, want him to be fired, and he's running for his life. I mean, this is like 1930 Germany. No doubt Schumer's right. But Jacob, isn't it hypocritical?
Totally.
Now the Democratic Party and the ADL are crying foul when now we don't like anti-Semitism. We don't like Jewish being attacked. Of course not. But they're the ones who promoted BLM, promoted a pro-Muslim party who didn't care for the Jewish people or Israel. So after years of promoting this, now, Jacob, they're in trouble. Any comment on Schumer and
Blumenthal, Schumer, Blumenthal, Steve Cohen, okay, have no right whatsoever, no right to complain. They're in the party with the squad.
Mm.
They're in the party with the squad. People like Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler have no right to complain. If there was a pogrom in the United States, and I pray to God there's not, but if there's a pogrom in the United States, it would be poetic justice if the first ones to be taken out and victimized were Schumer and Blumenthal and Cohen and Schiff and Adler. They should be the first victims of any pogrom because they've betrayed America's traditional relationship with the Jewish community. And they betrayed the Jewish community. And with them, I would drag out Debbie Wasserman Schultz. These are the Menlauses, the Jewish traitors. A Menlaus is to Judaism and to Jewish culture what Benedict Arnold is in the United States or what Judas is. They are traitors. They're in the same party with Alejandro Ortega-Cortez and with Olmert and with Rashid and Talib. They're in the same party with these people, the same party. And they viciously attacked Trump, the best friend, no matter what you make of him, he was the best friend Israel ever had in the White House, by far. And they made him #1 enemy. Not Tlaib, not Olmert. Go after Trump. Go after Israel's trusted friend.
Yes.
Schumer is a disgusting human being. He's not only a disgusting politician, he's a disgusting human being. And I would say the same for Schiff, the same for Blumenthal, the same for Wasserman Schultz, the same for all of them. And as much as I agree with him and respect him on certain things, I've said that Alan Dershowitz has behaved like Alan Jerkowitz. He's waking up and realizing the naive stupidity that he's exhibited continually in his friendship with the Democratic Party leadership like Obama. Now he's realizing what he should have realized 10, 12, 15 years ago at least.
Yeah, in the ADL, of course, all they want to do now is censor speech. That's their big claim to fame. We got to censor speech, censor speech. They go after Musk. They go after conservative Jewish leaders. Jonathan Greenblatt is completely out of line, but yet he calls foul for anti-Semitism.
He is a hypocrite, and his predecessor was a hypocrite. Jackie Mason, the Jewish comedian, he knew exactly what kind of hypocrites the ADL B'nai B'rith leadership were. Just parasitic hypocrites. Jackie Mason knew it, and he said it, and he was right.
Yeah, and these are the same people that help protect the speech of Muslims, anti-Jewish hatred.
Yes.
And the same people that supported BLM, who went after conservatives and Jewish.
You had the ACLU in Chicago. I can think of nothing more anti-American civil liberties. I can think of nothing more anti-American, nothing more uncivil, and nothing more anti-libertarian than a Nazi. But the ACLU went to court in Chicago and defended the Nazi Party. That is the ACLU.
Yeah.
Nothing American, nothing libertarian, nothing.
Yeah, it's like the Antichrist liberty.
Nothing civil.
Yeah, Antichrist liberty.
Liberal Jews are beyond disgusting because they betray their own people.
They do. They're like the Soros of in World War II. Exactly that. Jacob, speaking of the Jewish people in Israel, now we had a ceasefire to some certain degree. I wouldn't call it a ceasefire, but just basically a pause. And now Hamas has shot to the idea, basically began shooting to the idea. IDF responds. Now it's over. Now there's no ceasefire. Now there's no pause. Now Israel keeps focus their attention on Gaza, but now to the south. To that extent, the U.S. seems to be very much against their operations. Blinken had some words with what is his name, Yoav Gallant, regarding the operations in the south. Any comments on that, Jacob? Blinken seems to be.
Blinken is one of these left-wing traitor Jews.
Yeah.
America down the river, he'd sell the Jewish people down the river, he'd sell Israel down the river. He's the same as Garland, he's the same as Schiff, he's the same as Wasserman Schultz, the same as Schumer. He is in that camp. He's a traitor to Jewish interests, he's a traitor to American interests. Don't forget, since the 7th of October. The Biden administration has given $10 billion further in sanction relief to Iran, who sponsors it. You give them $10 billion. The Biden administration is giving humanitarian aid to Gaza, knowing that the government of Gaza is Hamas. They're taking that aid for their own purposes or selling it to fund their war, or taking the fuel for use to fuel rockets to attack Israel. This is Biden. 10 billion to Iran, giving aid to Hamas. It's not going to the people unless they're buying it. What else has he done? Putting restrictions on Israel. When the ceasefire was agreed to exchange hostages, where are the Americans, by the way? Israel has to give 3-1, not 1-1, 3-1. And Israel has to release terrorists.
Yeah,
Killers,
that's the crazy.
fighters. To get a woman or a child or an innocent person, they've got to give 3 terrorists. That's Biden's idea of a fair exchange. But something else. This is really it. Israel was forced by the Biden administration to agree to stop reconnaissance drones. So Hamas can use the ceasefire to rearm, refuel, reorganize outside of the surveillance of the Israelis. Oh, we want it for humanitarian reasons, but you can't fly drones over it to make sure we're not using it for military reasons. These people like Blinken and Austin and Brown and Obama, and perhaps above all, Jake Sullivan, and Obama and Susan Rice, who are on back of it. They should be held accountable. If it were up to me, there would be tribunals, and they'd be put on trial. I believe this is a betrayal, not only of Israel. I believe it is a betrayal of the United States. Yesterday, one of the biggest traitors in history died.
Yeah.
He died without facing man's justice. Henry Kissinger, who, when Americans were dying in Vietnam, being killed with weapons supplied by the Soviets and Chinese, opened the door to détente with Russia, increased trade with Russia, opened the door to increase trade with China while they were supplying the North Vietnamese with the hardware to kill Americans. That was Henry Kissinger with Nixon and Nixon. Well, he lived to be 100 years old.
Yeah.
He was never brought to justice for his betrayal. You know, I thank God that there is going to be God's justice, because I have very little faith in man's justice. If there were man's justice, people like George Bush would have been held accountable with Cheney for what they did after September 11th, giving the express visas to the Saudi Arabians. If there was real justice, Barack Obama would have been held accountable for giving $150 billion to Iran while Iran was engaging in terror against Americans. If there was real justice, Joe Biden would be hung.
You know,
Go ahead, brother.
To Jacob's point, I just want to bring it back around to the word. You know, we've been sold for years now that Islam is a religion of peace, and there are many, many secular Muslims, no doubt. But we also have to remember, at the heart of Islam, we're told in 1 John 2:22, who is a liar except he who denies that Jesus is the Christ?
Yes.
This is the Antichrist, the one who denies the Father and the Son. Islam does not accept Jesus as the Christ, does not accept him as the Son of God. That is Antichrist. And the kingdom of Antichrist is forming in Europe. The kingdom of Antichrist is forming in northern Michigan. Get prepared, Christian, because that is why they have to get rid of the Bible, because of verses like that.
Correct.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. We've seen it forming. Gert Wilders was right 20 years ago. People have been saying it earlier than that. And now we're facing the reality of European countries, American, obviously, the Jewish influence, the liberal Jewish influence in America has allowed this. They said nothing. Now they're facing a real trouble, anti-Semitism like we've never seen in our country. And now they're crying foul, but too late. It is too late. They shut down the Manhattan Bridge. I think it was. Wasn't the Manhattan Bridge? Yeah.
Brooklyn Bridge.
Was it the Brooklyn Bridge? Yeah.
Yes.
And
They
occupied
shut down Grand Central Station at Friday rush hour.
Oh,
They hijacked Armistice Day, Memorial Day in Britain. They hijacked it.
Now the Rockefeller Square with the Christmas
Right,
tree.
they
Shut that down. Yeah. And was it which council in London was it, Jay, that didn't want to have Hanukkah because of the problems that they were going to have if they celebrated Hanukkah? I forgot which one it was. We talked about it earlier, but yeah, Jacob, to your point, go ahead.
You're being told in schools that if you teach about the Holocaust, it offends Islam.
Oh.
This is what you're dealing with. You know, the kings of the north, the kings of the south. I do see in the book of Daniel God's judgment on the Islamic world. And it's coming and it's going to be fierce. It's going to be brutal. But I only look to the Lord for justice. When you have the Bush administration during September 11th, when the Saudi Arabians had the Bush administration in their back pocket, who's going to defend America? Americans are being murdered by Iranians, by the Iranian regime. And when Trump took out Soleimani, you had Scarborough and these left-wing reporters calling him a murderer.
Yeah.
Obama gave $150 billion in frozen assets to Iran to kill Americans while they were killing Americans.
Yeah.
Plus the hundreds of millions he got caught giving that was basically laundered money. In the opinion of many people, why did they get away with this? Well, they won't get away with it, but they think they do.
Yeah, amen. That's right. Jacob, we don't have a whole lot of time, but we'll discuss it next week to see where this is going. But Venezuela just launched an attack against Guyana. Brazil saying that they've come over the border. The U.S. has deployed some military, not a whole lot, but there's the assistant brigade, the SFAB, and they're there joining the Guyanan forces. So another war, another continent, wars and rumors of war. Jesus said this, but Brazil is on high alert. It looks like another pro-Islamic country like Venezuela, very pro-Iranian, wants to get there, as they've been wanting it for a long time, which is Guyana. So now, as a good time to strike, I would imagine, like any corrupt.
Again, just like with Iran, and October 7th, the bill being picked up for it by Obama and Joe Obama, 150 billion. Well, we can thank Biden for picking up the bill for this. He put the lid on fracking in America, on the Keystone Pipeline, and began buying oil again from Venezuela. Where'd they get the money? Biden gave it to him.
Yeah. And Maduro was very happy to take it. Now they're using it again.
Maduro's happy to take it.
Yeah, as Jay said, I think the French will be involved in some way, somehow, right,
well,
Jay?
You know what? Che Guevara and Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez are in hell having a reunion. It won't be very long before Joe Biden joins them.
Yeah, and Venezuela has been really at the front of promoting anti-Semitism for sure.
Not only that, they've had ties with Iran.
Yeah, very much so. Deep ties going back to Hugo Chavez. Davey, any thoughts? Any final thoughts? We're going to move into backstage. Any final thoughts before we go?
Oh, yeah, just quickly, I was just going to say, look, the anti-Semitism here has just gone like through the roof. In fact, I read an article 2 days ago that has gone up 591% since October 7th here in this country. It's almost double Germany. I think it's gone up 320% in Germany, but we're almost double Germany. So Jews are already feeling unsafe here, and schools have been taking a very, very pro-Palestinian stance. Jewish teachers are being feeling threatened here.
Wow. What a time, isn't it, Jacob? What a time, Jay. What a time, Davey, for Christians to preach the gospel to the Jewish people. to stand and pray with them and for them, that they would come to know the Messiah, that would come to know Jesus. As Paul the Apostle told them, to provoke them to jealousy. Our destiny with Christ is bound up with their destiny with Christ too. And Paul the
Let's
Apostle
remember something.
Acts 11.
Time is going to come in Zechariah chapter 12 when the nations who come against Israel are going to be the personal enemies of Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ is going to be the personal enemy of the nations who come against Israel.
Yeah.
Now, Israel is going to go under God's judgment for rejecting the Messiah. That is true. They are still his people, and that is still his land. And he will bless those who bless and curse those who curse. May he curse the Biden administration.
Yeah, may we pray and bless the Jewish people with the gospel of Jesus. That's the gospel that Paul said to the Jew first, and also to the Gentiles. So God bless you. Go ahead, Jacob. Final thoughts.
It happened in London. I know Christians I was in India at the time. The Jewish people were so moved at the pro-Israel demonstration in London, the counter demonstration, to see so many Christians, born-again Christians, holding placards and standing with Israel. It was a powerful witness. And the same happened in Washington. We had 300,000 plus people demonstrating. So many of them were saved Christians, and the Jewish community saw it. That is a witness in itself. Even a rabbi who vehemently opposes the gospel, like Tuvia Singer, has admitted his heart is moved when he saw the love that Christians have for Israel and the Jews, and there's nothing he can do to deny it. Even Tuvia Singer admitted that once. Provoke them to jealousy. You want to see a Jew get saved, provoke them to jealousy. Why do you love us when the world hates us? Because of your Messiah who gave us salvation, and he can give you salvation. That's why these things are happening.
Amen. Because your Messiah lives in us, and he wants to live in you.
Because we have your Messiah.
Amen. Hallelujah.
I wish you had him.
Yeah. We have your word. We have your scriptures. We have your Messiah, and we worship the God of Israel. You know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
We pray God lifts their veil from their eyes and open their hearts to the truth of Jesus. So very good. Jacob, thank you so much. We're going to go into backstage and talk about this stuff that we can't talk about on YouTube or Facebook. So we're going to sign off. I don't know if we have any questions. I even forgot to ask the questions, but if you do have any questions, we do. All right, Jacob, you're not off the hook today. You're going to have to answer some. So
Okay.
Gladly. God bless you guys. We'll see you in backstage.
Hello, and thank you for watching Moriel TV. There are so many things that are happening at Moriel Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan to India to Africa and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.